It was a cool, crisp morning in Carmel by the Sea, California. The Pacific breeze rustled the trees outside Clint Eastwood's Spanish-style estate as the legendary actor, now 95, sipped his black coffee on the patio. Though well into his twilight years, Clint remained sharp as a tack, his voice gravelly but confident, his eyes still carrying that trademark squint that once made outlaws tremble. But that morning, something felt different. The birdsong seemed quieter. The phone rang. Clint glanced at the screen. Unknown caller. He normally ignored such calls. Today, though, instinct kicked in. Hello? Mr. Eastwood, this is Special Agent Tom Riverson with the Department of Justice. I regret to inform you that a federal warrant has been issued for your arrest. You're required to appear in a federal courtroom in Washington, D.C. this Friday. Clint didn't flinch. On what charges? The agent paused. Unlawful coordination with foreign nationals. Tied to unauthorized military film production in Taiwan, and obstruction of justice. Clint nearly choked on his coffee. Are you serious? He growled. I haven't made a film in 3 years, and that was a damn documentary on Yosemite. I'm afraid I can't say more over the phone. You'll need to speak with your legal counsel. Click. The call ended. Clint stared at the horizon, his mind racing. This wasn't just some bureaucratic mix-up. This had the feel of a hit job. But why? Why now? By afternoon, the news had already broken. CNN flashed the headline, Clint Eastwood to face federal charges. DOJ moves swiftly. Fox News pushed back harder. Hollywood legend targeted by deep state? Legal experts cry foul. Social media erupted. Conservatives accused the DOJ of politically motivated attacks. Liberals wondered what Eastwood had been hiding. But no one knew the full story, not even Clint. That night, Clint got a call from a name he hadn't heard in years. Clint, it's Pam. Pam Bondi, the former Florida Attorney General, now U.S. Attorney General under President Donald Trump, sounded tense. I can't talk long, she said, but I need you in D.C. tomorrow. And bring every document you have related to your 2021 Taiwan project. You're being set up, and I think I know who's behind it. Clint blinked. What do you mean, Pam? It's bigger than you. Bigger than Hollywood. There's a faction inside the DOJ, leftover Obama loyalists, trying to frame you to make a point. You're a symbol, Clint. An icon. And they want to tarnish you to hurt Trump's re-election campaign. You endorsed him last year, remember? Clint sighed. He remembered all too well. I'll be there, he said. But if this is the last act of my career, it'll be the best damn performance of my life. Pam chuckled. I'll make sure the judge has a front row seat. Little did they know the courtroom showdown would turn into a spectacle the country would never forget, one that would redefine justice in America. Clint Eastwood arrived in Washington, D.C. looking more like a stoic cowboy than a defendant. Dressed in a plain gray suit, he walked past cameras flashing like lightning in a summer storm. His lawyer, Mitchell Hayes, an ex-Marine and hard-nosed constitutional law expert, walked beside him. Reporters hurled questions. Mr. Eastwood, do you deny the charges? Are you working for the Chinese military? Did President Trump ask Pam Bondi to intervene? Clint said nothing. He simply adjusted his tie, tipped an invisible hat, and entered the United States District Court with the grace of a man who had nothing to hide and nothing to fear. Inside the courtroom, it was standing room only. The case had exploded on national media. Every network was carrying it live. Conservatives feared a witch hunt. Progressives hoped for an explosive scandal. But few could have predicted what came next. Judge Horace Brannigan, a Reagan appointee with a no-nonsense reputation, presided over the proceedings. The prosecution, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Lena Trask, wasted no time laying out their case. We have proof, she began confidently, that Mr. Eastwood's production company funneled funds through a Taiwanese film studio that had indirect ties to a paramilitary group. The documentary, which included footage of Taiwan's military installations, was smuggled out and edited on foreign servers, compromising national security. Furthermore, Mr. Eastwood refused to comply with requests to turn over all production data. Clint leaned over to Mitchell and whispered, "This is like accusing me of espionage for filming a sunset over Taipei." Mitchell nodded. "They're spinning shadows into monsters." Just then, a murmur spread through the courtroom. The heavy oak doors swung open, and in walked Pam Bondi, flanked by 2 DOJ agents. All eyes turned. The U.S. Attorney General, glowing with determination, marched directly to the judge and handed him a sealed folder. "Your Honor," she said, voice steady and authoritative, "before this hearing proceeds, I am invoking my statutory authority under Title 28 of the U.S. Code to intervene in this matter. What I have in this file, marked classified, Level 3, will show that Mr. Eastwood's actions were not only authorized but encouraged by a rogue office inside the Department of State during the previous administration." The courtroom gasped. Even Judge Brannigan raised an eyebrow. "Proceed," he said cautiously. Pam opened the folder and handed copies to the judge and opposing counsel. The documents were stunning. They included a memo from 2020 during the final months of the Biden presidency detailing a covert cultural diplomacy effort. Eastwood's documentary had been sanctioned not because of its content, but because of his symbolic value abroad. His persona was considered a morale booster to U.S.-friendly nations resisting Chinese influence. This initiative, Pam explained, was kept off the books. And when President Trump came to office, it was deliberately hidden from transition teams. Clint Eastwood is being used as a scapegoat for a program buried by bureaucrats who are now panicking because the truth threatens their credibility. Trask looked stunned. She flipped through the documents, her mouth slightly open. Mitchell Hayes smirked. Clint sat back in his chair, arms folded. For the first time, the tide was turning. Judge Brannigan removed his glasses. "Ms. Bondi, are you prepared to submit this entire dossier to the court for immediate review?" Pam nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. And I ask for an immediate motion to dismiss." The courtroom burst into chaos. Reporters typed furiously. Clint's name trended on every platform. And back in the White House, President Donald Trump reportedly shouted with joy at the news. "Pam just buried the deep state with one folder. That's why she's the best." But the battle wasn't over yet. Pam had exposed the rot, but the rot wasn't going to go quietly. The next morning, someone leaked a shocking video, one that seemed to contradict Clint's innocence. And suddenly, the trial took a dark, personal turn. The tide had turned again, but the enemy wasn't just hidden in the shadows anymore. They were ready to strike, and the courtroom was about to turn into a war zone. Because the next witness to be called was the very man Clint thought had died 3 years ago. The courtroom buzzed with confusion as Judge Brannigan read from a sealed note handed to him by a court officer. "We will now hear from a surprise witness summoned at the request of the prosecution," the judge said. "His name is Major Caleb Soren, former U.S. military intelligence, declared deceased in Kabul in 2022. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Clint's brow furrowed. Caleb Soren wasn't just a name from the past, he was the man Clint had worked with in Taiwan during the documentary. They coordinated interviews with military advisors, choreographed reenactments of historical battles, even spent hours drinking green tea and laughing over war stories. Caleb had gone dark in late 2021. The report of his death was brief and uninvestigated. But now, there he was walking into the courtroom with a slight limp, wearing a gray suit and a thin smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Clint whispered to Pam he was dead. Pam replied under her breath, "Not anymore." The prosecution called him to the stand. Lena Trask, grasping at whatever narrative remained after Pam's devastating disclosures, looked visibly shaken, but she pressed on. "Major Soren, can you explain your relationship with Mr. Eastwood in 2021? Caleb nodded, voice low but clear. "We met through a quiet diplomatic outreach. The plan was to document military morale in Taiwan through cultural storytelling. Mr. Eastwood was brought in because of his global recognition and his ability to shape narratives without triggering diplomatic alarms." "And were you aware of any illegal activities conducted by Mr. Eastwood during this time?" Caleb paused. "Then, no. In fact, I can testify that Clint repeatedly refused to cut corners. He demanded transparency in everything. He was never told the full story, but I was." The courtroom leaned in. Even Trask froze. "I was assigned by rogue elements in the State Department, yes, during the Biden administration, to manage the optics of an underground information op. They wanted Clint to produce something that could provoke China, using soft power to incite tension and draw a reaction. They wanted escalation, but Clint wouldn't play along. When he found out that some of the interviews had been manipulated, he shut it down. That's when the heat started." Pam stood, taking the opportunity. "Major Soren, can you confirm if the order to set up Mr. Eastwood came from inside the DOJ?" "Yes," he said. "And I have emails, voice recordings, and a USB drive with the original project documents." Clint Eastwood wasn't a participant in espionage. He was the only person trying to stop it. Judge Brannigan's gavel slammed. "Bring that drive forward." A bailiff retrieved it and delivered it to the judge, who then recessed for an hour to review its contents. In the meantime, the courtroom swirled with whispers and speculation. Every news station was broadcasting live. Pundits were flipping their takes in real time. Even MSNBC's legal analyst muttered on air, "If this holds, it's the largest case of political entrapment in modern U.S. history." Clint sat still, hands folded, his gaze fixed on the witness box. Caleb avoided eye contact. The years had worn on him. Guilt hung around him like a storm cloud. After the break, Judge Brannigan returned with fire in his eyes. "This court has seen enough. Based on the evidence provided, the testimonies, and the emerging trail of deception, I am dismissing all charges against Mr. Eastwood with prejudice. Furthermore, I am issuing arrest warrants for 2 former DOJ officials and 3 cyber operations contractors involved in fabricating evidence and suppressing classified intelligence." Pam Bondi didn't smile, but her eyes gleamed with resolve. The courtroom erupted. Mitchell Hayes embraced Clint. Cameras flashed. The world watched as Clint Eastwood, America's aging icon, stood up and adjusted his tie, his jaw set like granite. Outside the courthouse, thousands had gathered. Veterans waved flags. Supporters held signs that read "Justice for Clint" and "Expose the Deep State." But just as Clint stepped to the microphone, a piercing bang cut through the air. A gunshot. The shot rang out like thunder splitting a dry sky. Chaos exploded in front of the courthouse. Reporters hit the ground. Secret Service agents surged around Clint Eastwood, shielding him with bulletproof briefcases and their own bodies. Pam Bondi was shoved into a black SUV. Mitchell Hayes hit the pavement, crawling toward Clint. Another shot. Then silence. No screams. No sirens. Just silence. Clint was on one knee, steadying himself against a railing. He hadn't been hit, just rattled. But 20 yards away, sprawled on the steps, was Major Caleb Soren. Blood pooled beneath his shoulder. A sniper had clipped him just as he exited the courthouse through a side door. Pam rushed from her vehicle as medics swarmed the scene. Clint forced his way through the barricade. Caleb was still conscious, his face pale. He locked eyes with Clint. "They didn't want me to talk." Clint knelt beside him. "You did good, Caleb. You stopped it." Caleb managed a weak smile. "Tell them the truth matters. Even if it gets you killed." Those were his last words. The man who'd faked his death to survive political betrayal had finally come clean, only to be silenced forever. Aftermath. The reckoning. Within 24 hours, the sniper was identified. An ex-Black Ops contractor linked to a private security firm under federal investigation. The hit had been ordered through an encrypted channel traced to a shell company in Brussels, tied to a former intelligence official. Pam Bondi, now in the national spotlight, didn't flinch. "We are not just investigating," she told Fox News. "We're dismantling. Every level, every office, every fake patriot who thought the truth was theirs to manipulate. We're coming for you." Donald Trump held a live press conference the next day on the White House lawn, flanked by Clint and Pam. "We always knew there were bad actors in the swamp," Trump declared. "But what they tried to do to Clint Eastwood, it's disgusting. It's criminal. And with Pam leading the DOJ, it's over. We're cleaning house. And Clint, he's an American hero." The crowd of reporters and supporters erupted into cheers. Eastwood simply nodded, tipping his cowboy hat. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I'm just tired of people thinking the truth is optional." Epilogue: the man, the myth, the warning. Weeks passed. Arrests were made. Documents declassified. A secret State Department op called Project Paper Crane, designed to subtly incite instability in the Pacific, was exposed. The idea had been to use cultural icons like Clint to manipulate global perception. It backfired. Netflix bought the rights to Clint's documentary, now titled Silent Honor: Taiwan's Forgotten War. The film swept the Emmys and led to a bipartisan Senate Committee on Covert Domestic Influence Operations. Pam Bondi rose in political circles, hailed as the woman who took on the shadow government. And Clint? He returned to California. Spent time with his grandchildren. Rode horses again. And once, just once, he sat on a bench overlooking Carmel Bay and whispered to Mitchell, "They almost buried me in lies. But the truth, it always crawls back up." The story of Clint Eastwood's near arrest wasn't just about justice, it was a cautionary tale in a post-truth world. A reminder that even in the age of manipulation and power games, one man with integrity can still turn the tide.